We're going to jump right into some policy discussions and how we can identify where the gaps are, where gaps in policy. We've heard a lot of recurrent themes like legacy pollution issues. We have a lot of policy levers that we've been pulling, like tax credits and all of that. But we want to continue to dig a little deeper and look at the layering of federal, state, and even some local policies, and have some great discussion. So in the turn of events, with some flight cancellations due to cloud strikes, some COVID outbreaks are going on around the country, I'm going to moderate this next panel, and so I'm going to have a lot of fun with my panelists. Jonathan Smith, who's the Senior Chief Deputy Director of Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, and we're going to hear a little bit about what Michigan is doing, both in energy and in the broader economy. Kaila Hood is a Senior Policy Advisor for the Office of Representative Stansbury out of New Mexico, and I think we'll get into some technical assistance and capacity building discussions there. And Dru Palmer, who's Grants Integration Manager in the Office of Wyoming Governor Mark Gordon, and you've heard reference to Dru in our rapid response team. So let's come on up and let's get going. I'm sorry. So Kaila, I'm going to start with you, and just tell me a little bit about yourself, Office of Representative Stansbury, and your interest here in energy communities and supporting energy communities.
Absolutely. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Hi, I'm Kaila Hood. So I've been with the Office of Representative Stansbury for about 8 months now, but I've worked on Capitol Hill for about 6 years. I also was on a government affairs team for the League of Conservation Voters for a while. I'm from Colorado originally. I worked for Representative DeGette's office when the Office of Just Transition in Colorado was being formed. And I was lucky enough to come into Representative Stansbury's office as the New Mexico Just Transition Advisor. Kayla Lucero Matucci was coming on board. And New Mexico is a great example of a lot of what we're talking about here today, unfortunately. So it's one of I think it's the second top crude oil producing state under Texas. It produces quite a bit of natural gas as well, and we still have 9 permitted coal mines and 3 operating coal plants. There's been some really public plant and mine closures in the last couple years. Probably the best example is the San Juan mine and generating station in Farmington, New Mexico, which is where my boss is from. Her parents are actually dislocated workers who used to work for the San Juan generating station. So this is a very personal conversation to her as well. And New Mexico is also an interesting place because it is, like I said, heavily reliant on these gas and oil and coal revenues. I think it's about 40% of the state's revenues come from fossil fuels, and that leads to almost 85% of the public school funding comes from those revenues, so heavily predicated on that. But they passed this Energy Transition Act in 2019, and the state is trying to move away and figure out a way to really support these economies and communities as they move away from carbon-intensive energy. So there's just a lot of examples of sort of everything we're talking about here today. I should say we have a rapid response team in northern New Mexico as well, out of Los Alamos. So I'm excited and honored to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Well, Kaila, thank you, and we'll certainly come back to the ETA as well in New Mexico. And so, Jonathan, this isn't Michigan's first go-around in economic transition, but the second go-around in the economic transition, it has a different element to it. Changing huge supply chains, and certainly the energy sector. So tell us a little bit more about where Michigan is and where you're looking at the coupling of the existing manufacturing, future manufacturing, and energy transition.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
yeah, I'll try to get to that quickly. No, it's great to be here. It's been a really interesting conversation. There's a lot, for me to learn from the other communities who've been presenting and participating. So, in Michigan, the primary energy communities that we think about are auto communities. We don't think of automobiles necessarily as, an energy product, but, they're powered by gasoline today. And as we move towards the future, we know they're going to transition to more battery electric vehicles. And that's going to have a huge impact on Michigan's manufacturing footprint and employment and economic, growth potentials. And about a year ago, the governor's office asked me to lead an auto community transition strategy development process. That turned into working with the legislature to create the Community Worker Economic Transition Office, which is tasked with helping both the auto sector and the utility sector in Michigan and the communities that are home to those businesses and the workers, who are employed by those businesses, be prepared to make the clean energy transition. And it was really exciting to me to have energy and autos linked explicitly through this legislation, because I think there's a massive opportunity for us as we need to build out this huge grid of clean and renewable energy with more wind and solar and battery energy storage and distribution capacity and internet connectivity and all these things we're going to have to do to meet our climate goals, our energy goals. It's going to require building, manufacturing, and deploying a bunch of stuff. And the thing we're good at in Michigan is making stuff, right? And so a lot of what the work we're doing right now is working really closely with our energy sector, with our utilities and others, to really understand what are both the near-term and long-term needs that they are going to have from a manufacturing perspective, and how can we transition more of our existing manufacturers into these energy supply chains so that they can both support the communities that they're in, hopefully, have some economic growth potential coming out of this, and then also be a critical supply chain for not just Michigan, but the entire country as folks work to build out this clean and renewable energy grid.
Jonathan, thank you. And I want to go to Dru, but the Campbell County, Wyoming, if it were its own state, it would be the #1 producing state, or #1 producer of coal in the United States, just Campbell County, Wyoming. So I'm imagining that coal production in Wyoming is pretty important to the economy. And can you open that up? And how is it important to the state? And what are we looking at for the future in Wyoming?
Thanks, Brian. We're excited to be here. I am the Grants Integration Manager for Governor Gordon in Wyoming. First time we've ever had a Grants Integration Manager, so we're building it as we go. Make no doubt about it, Wyoming is not leaving behind our core industries of coal, oil, and gas. They still are a significant part of our portfolio, and what the issue really is carbon emissions and being able to capture those. And the answer to that and the solution is really advanced technologies and innovation, and Wyoming is putting money into that. We also understand that demand is going up for electricity because we all like our toys. And in order to have grid stability while we're transitioning to diversifying into other energy industries, we're going to continue to need coal, oil, and gas to bridge that gap. That's just on the thermal side for grid stability. We're also figuring out that there are a lot of non-thermal uses for coal, which I hope to talk about a little bit too. Wyoming is an all-of-the-above energy state. We are excited because not only in addition to our core assets, which are coal, oil, and gas, we're going to be able to diversify in other energy industries, which is great for us. We've had a hard time diversifying in the state of Wyoming. We rely on minerals for our overall budget. Pre-pandemic, we were looking at probably 66% of the overall budget was generated by minerals. And then post-pandemic, it's been around 50%, and that's because of all of the ARPA funding and other things that are available. So not only do we have our core assets, we're looking at nuclear development for the full fuel cycle of nuclear, hydrogen, direct air capture, carbon capture and storage, rare earth elements and critical minerals, wind and solar. It's going to take a combination of all of these things to be able to meet demand. Just to give you an idea, Brian, thank you for asking about Campbell County. So Wyoming is the #1 coal producer in the nation. We produce more coal than any other state. Wyoming ships coal to about 26 other states for power generation. And in Campbell County alone, the assessed valuation in 2023 for minerals was coal was assessed at $2.3 billion, oil was assessed at $1.6 billion, and gas was assessed at $500 million. That's just in one county. So, yes, Campbell County. So, Wyoming, raise your hand. Anyone from Wyoming? Thanks, guys. So, yes, and that doesn't include the rest of the state. Oil and gas, we're produced in 23 states, 21 out of 23 states, and the oil and gas industry contributes $2.42 billion in taxes in the year 2023. So, you can see how minerals are going to continue to impact our state. We have a high energy IQ, and for us to be able to diversify in the energy space is really important. But what we figured out is it's not just our coal-impacted communities that are struggling in their community to upgrade their infrastructure, housing, et cetera. It's all of our communities. And so I look forward to being able to talk about the IWG and the grants management initiative in which the governor is doing.
Well, Dru, thank you for setting that stage, and I'll even mention that when it comes to leadership, classics primacy is a component of diversification as well, and so happy about that. I'm gonna come back to each of you, to focus, to mention some of the policy efforts that are happening in the states at the state level, and so actually I'm gonna go in reverse. So Dru, keep it going. What are some of the policy efforts within Wyoming?
I would love to talk about that. I've got some successes, and then I've got some not so big successes. So I'll start with the successes. We started engaging with the IWG in November of 2021. Wyoming was actually the pilot office that began the work of the IWGs that then took off and multiplied across the country as a rapid response team. We refused to go with rapid response team. We still are a Wyoming IWG, so little independence. What we quickly figured out from all of our communities is we were not in the game. We didn't have the resources. We didn't know what grants were available. We didn't have people who could write grants. We were using the wrong word on grants. We just were not in the game. So we learned really quickly that we had a problem and we needed to find a solution. So just this last year, Governor Gordon has announced the Grants Management Initiative. We have now stood up a Grants Management Office under our Budget Department. We have hired a third-party contractor, Hagerty Consulting, a national contractor, to assist us in getting organized and standing up a dashboard. The dashboard is going to be customized to Wyoming, and it will have 4 different phases. The first phase, we're focused on Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act and IRA, because those have a shelf life. So we needed to make sure that we were in the game. The second phase will look at all of the state agency funding opportunities. The third phase, of which we're just getting started, will look at nonprofit and private sector opportunities. And then we also have on board a national accounting firm that specializes in IRA tax credits and direct pay. So one of the exciting things of this effort is it's going to centralize the whole grants management life cycle process and provide resources so that we can help you research for your particular topic or idea or grant that you want to go after. We can research what federal and state opportunities are out there. We can assist you with stacking and braiding those opportunities, but we also offer training, grant writing, grant reviewing, monitoring, reporting, and auditing services through our state budget office. One of the other problems for our communities is they were having a hard time not just getting the grant, but then managing the grant. And there's just not the resources to go around. So we decided that in order to do this right, we needed to employ a long-term capacity building solution that gets at technical assistance for our communities, that assists our state agencies with their legacy programs, but also with all of these new opportunities because we're strapped for resources. So as we move down the road, it's really exciting. We just rolled it out. We stood the whole project up in 90 days, by the way. That's state government. 90 days, we stood up a unique project. So we just announced 2 weeks ago, the governor did a formal announcement, and in 8 days, we saw close to 40 technical assistance requests come into the budget department for communities all across Wyoming. So we're very excited about it. And I think with that, I'll stop there, Brian, and let others talk.
Yeah, well, and we're really excited about it too. And I mean, it is really that, you know, one of the reasons we're having this forum is to share some best practices. And so hearing what Wyoming is doing is, I saw a lot of heads nodding and taking notes. Hey, we need to do this in our state too. So Jonathan, what are you doing in Michigan?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot the last few years. It's been busy. You know, coming out of COVID, it was like a cannon shot with, you know, first BIL and CHIPS and Science and the Inflation Reduction Act. And so we've been organizing the state to not just, you know, sort of try to pull down and draw down as much of that federal assistance as possible, but to address, you know, the capacity issue everybody's been talking about so much. And so a couple of things. One, you know, I mentioned the Clean Energy Jobs Act that passed last year, creating a 100% clean energy standard by 2040, making Michigan one of the, we have one of the most aggressive standards in the country and certainly probably in the Midwest. And so, you know, that has unlocked, I think, a lot of interest and activity in coming to Michigan for clean energy projects, which is very exciting. You know, one of the things we did is organize sort of cross-cabinet. So much of this stuff involves, you know, not just, you know, the infrastructure asset agencies like MDOT and EGLE, but, you know, my agency, which is responsible for workforce, and we also have the state's economic development agency, the housing finance agency. There's a lot of folks involved in this, and so we created a $330 million fund called the Making It in Michigan Competitiveness Fund, which is designed to provide matching support and technical assistance capacity enhancement to entities around the state of Michigan that are pursuing federal grants, federal loans, or tax credits. And so that is governed by a committee that, you know, is from a number of different agencies, and we're working together all the time to try to go through, you know, different grant opportunities. And you know, we often know who would benefit the most, but the folks who would benefit the most don't always know about the opportunity. And so there's a, you know, concerted effort to kind of recruit good applications from folks where we know it would be impactful. You know, we're a swing state, which means I think a lot about capacity, but the other thing I think a lot about is sustainability, because, you know, the legislature that created some of these programs and the governor that championed them, you know, we'll have a different governor in a couple of years. We could have a different legislative majority as soon as this fall. So making sure that we're thinking about building things in ways where they can add that we're, the capacity enhancement that we're providing is going to have lasting impact. I mean, in Michigan, we've experienced this in the past where there's a ton of federal support, there's a ton of federal help, things get built, and then the support dries up, and, you know, locals they're left feeling like they wasted a lot of effort, they wasted a lot of time, and you know, they didn't really get to the outcome they were hoping to get to because the dollars dried up. And so on the capacity side and the technical assistance side, one of the things that we did is took a grant that we received from EDA and co-invested along with the Michigan Municipal League. They have a community foundation, so this is the States Association of City and Township Governments, and we built a technical assistance digital portal that is backed up by technical assistance capacity enhancement with, you know, a contractor who can come in and help individual communities, and particularly in Justice 40 communities, you know, pursue grants. And we found, you know, building it outside of state government is great because, number one, we're really bad at building websites. Number two, you know, the relationships that MML has with, you know, nonpartisan and bipartisan local leaders all over the state really enhances the credibility of the tool. And number three, it's an easy way for us to attract other foundation support to kind of grow and enhance the capacity that we're able to provide. So if anybody's interested in investing in capacity enhancement in Michigan, we've got a great way for you to help do that. And we're really excited. We think there's an opportunity to expand the partnerships beyond just the Michigan Municipal League, but make it a tool that small businesses or nonprofits could also have access to. We'd need to build out, obviously a little bit more technical capacity in the site itself, and then bring on more technical assistance service providers to be able to help. But really excited about that as a way to make sure that the things we're doing now will continue to have impact in years ahead.
Jonathan, thank you. And Kaila, help me bridge the gap. Also, state level policy, but then thinking about your boss and interest in national level policy, learning from New Mexico.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're always trying to lift up good things that are happening at the state level, whether it's in New Mexico or whether we're seeing things in other states that are really working. In New Mexico, as I said, in 2019, we passed the Energy Transition Act, which was at the time one of the most ambitious renewable portfolio standards in the country. I think it's still among those, so 100% renewable by 2050. And I'm proud to say that 47% of the in-state energy generation did come from renewables last year, and there's a huge potential for geothermal, wind, and solar in New Mexico. But at the same time, essentially all of the northern part of the state and much of the southern part of the state is the Permian Basin, is still just heavily reliant on this boom and bust cycle, right? That much of the West has experienced for a long time now. And so I think what has been interesting to see and what we've been trying to lift up is that the New Mexico Department of Economic Development has done a lot of great work to sort of identify what the challenges are and what the path forward is. And they released a report in 2021 that laid out sort of the 9 industries that they see being most relevant in New Mexico, and that was everything from aerospace to agriculture to outdoor recreation. And identifying some of the patterns that they were seeing, some of the challenges, and that was like recruitment and retention, higher education matching the need for workers in the state, things like that, and then laid out a path forward. And what's been really crazy to see, or not crazy, but just amazing to see, is like how much that has really shifted the resources at the state level. So they've hired, like I said, this Just Transition Advisor who sits within the Department of Economic Development and is supposed to sort of coordinate between all of these different agencies and the communities, and is also contributing to, they're doing that plan annually now. They hired an infrastructure czar to sort of oversee some of the IRA and IIJA dollars. And so I think, I don't know if anyone in this room has noticed, but the federal government is a little bit dysfunctional right now, at least on the House side where I sit. So I think we've been really trying to see what's working and what's working between governments and communities, and just trying to take that and move it along at the federal level as well.
Well, thank you. And Dru, I'm going to come back, so I'm going to tee up all 3 of you. Can you name 1 or 2 wins and a real big challenge that's still ahead? And Dru, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I imagine revenue replacement in terms of, the property taxes, 85% of the general fund, that's things like that. I'm imagining that's a challenge. But what's a couple wins and a big challenge?
Thanks, Brian. And I could talk about this, so I'm going to go fast and short so that everybody else has a chance to talk. First, I think one of the big wins we had was the development of the IWG. I think the partnerships that we've developed with our federal representatives that actually are responsible for doing work in Wyoming, that was a huge first step. And I think that jointly we have come a long way, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say that our point of contact for our federal partners, our quarterback is Carolyn Bryan, and she has been fantastic, so thank you. The other big win, of course, is that we got to the point of standing up the Grants Management Office. So I think that that's huge, and I think that we're going to start seeing the benefits of that probably in the next 6 months and then the years to come, is my hope. However, we do have challenges, and the one challenge, there's more than one, but the one I want to talk about today is the frustration that we have in Wyoming. 66% of our minerals and 50% of our surface is federal. So we work with federal land management agencies such as the Bureau of Land Management and the U.S. Forest Service. Because of that, we have this public process that we have to go to. So we're, as an example, involved with the DOE and our University of Wyoming School of Energy Resources on multiple projects looking at advanced technologies and innovation for coal usage. Just recently, the Bureau of Land Management put out a decision that in the Powder River Basin, they are making the decision that there should be no future leasing of coal in Campbell County. That is irresponsible. So we're putting all this money into advanced technologies because carbon emissions is the issue, and they're ripping the rug out from underneath us by taking out the feedstock in which we can further those advancements. The other thing that they've done in Wyoming is another extremely energy-rich area, which is southwest Wyoming, down by Rock Springs Green River. All of those technologies are being employed down there, including nuclear. They recently came out with their draft environmental impact statement for the resource management plan area, and they chose, unprecedented, they chose the preservation alternative as the preferred alternative, which impacts access, leasing, transmission lines. We're looking at solar right now for that area. So we have our challenges that they're pushing us to the cliff. We're ready to jump, but the IWG is saying, wait, we'll help you. So we need to do better on all the sister agencies to have a collective vision.
Dru, thank you for that. That sounds like it's a big challenge, and we're gonna work with you on it for sure. And Jonathan, what are a couple wins and challenges?
Yeah, there's a ton of wins, so I'm going to cheat and say the one win is that we are the #1 state in the Midwest, one of the top 5 in the country in terms of the creation of clean energy jobs, and there's obviously a whole bunch of projects that have led up to that, but all of which was completely unlocked by the Biden administration investing in America agenda. Being able to work super closely with the administration, being one of the first states to get a CEFI designation, being able to, the retooling grants that just came online recently, they're going to help, extend the life of a GM facility in Lansing. So tons and tons of great wins that all add up to that one. Another thing I'll say is we just recently were designated an EV workforce hub by the Biden administration. We've been working really collaboratively with the White House NEC team, with folks from DOE, from DOL, and that is an enormously helpful designation that is going to allow us to bring stakeholders together around some of the workforce challenges in the state in a collaborative way. It's just the convening power of the White House has been enormously helpful for us to get folks who might be suspicious of the state trying to exert too much control over things, but when they get invited by the White House, they're really excited about showing up and be part of that conversation. So it's been really helpful. In terms of a challenge, I would say the kind of what I mentioned a little bit earlier, the thinking about how policy sustainability in a very difficult and challenging political environment. Obviously a lot of the big federal investments were passed on a party line vote here in DC. Same is true in Michigan. The clean energy law passed on a party line vote in Lansing. And a lot of my work has been going to the business community now and folks who didn't necessarily support that legislation and say, look, I'm not trying to tell you should do something different. I'm not asking you to say you support this policy or do anything. I'm just trying to help your members. There's jobs here for you. Bring them into the coalition and make them part of this. Because if we don't do that, if we do not have a broad bipartisan coalition of support, at least amongst the stakeholder groups, it just increases the likelihood that when there's a political change in Lansing, we're never going to meet our 2040 standard. We're never going to meet our economic development goals because those laws will just get repealed and we'll change direction. And so really figuring out how to bring more, particularly industry groups into this coalition and making it more robust and more sustainable is probably one of the key challenges.
There are a lot of parallels between the IWG's work and what you're doing in Michigan too. So Kaila, a win and a challenge, and then I'm going to have you all give a 5-word answer to what we need to keep doing in our roadmap. So wins win challenge and what we need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to bring up a couple of New Mexico specific sort of wins and examples of great things that are happening at the state. We also passed a match fund this last legislative session at the beginning of the year. It's very exciting. So I think that's a huge obstacle for a lot of communities, is just being able to meet those requirements, and so that's going to open up a lot of opportunities at the state level. Another really cool thing that's happening is there's a group called Somos un Pueblo Unido that works primarily in the southern portion of the state. And they have been working on a guaranteed income program for reskilling workers. So paying up to a certain amount, and I'm forgetting the amount right now, for workers to get reskilling training and transition away from carbon-intensive energy jobs. And that's been really successful and a really cool example that I don't think I've seen anywhere else. And then I had another one, but it left my brain. So there's many cool things happening in New Mexico right now. Many, many wins. I think I have heard a couple of jokes already. I wasn't able to come yesterday, but it sounds like capacity was brought up. That is an issue in New Mexico. It's really challenging. I think we've heard across the board that, and I think Dru even said this earlier, it's not just identifying grants. It's sort of the whole life cycle. It's identifying, it's planning for, it's applying for, it's administrating grants. I mean, it's all a challenge. So I think we've been really lucky also to have the help of the Four Corners Rapid Response Team, and like I said, the integration of that with a lot of the initiatives that are going on at the state level in the Department of Economic Development. But it's a continued challenge, really. And then I think also one challenge that I would bring up related to the Rapid Response Team actually is that it sits out of Los Alamos, and the labs have a very complicated history with the tribes in New Mexico and the Pueblos in New Mexico. The Pueblos, Tesuque Pueblo, for example, which is just down the hill from Lanel, was displaced for the building of the lab, and a lot of our tribes and Pueblos continue to face pollution and contamination challenges related to practices ongoing at the lab, and also related to testing of weapons across New Mexico. And so I think understanding the cultural context of partners is really important, and understanding also that the labs are a huge provider of jobs and resources in New Mexico, and we love working with them. But there's pros and there's cons to where you place things. But that's something I've really heard there, and I think it's worth bringing up, how we think about who we're connecting with and how we're providing those resources. And I'll stop there because I know we are short on time, but
We're standing in the way of lunch for everyone,
Yeah.
but I will give Jonathan and Dru just 5 words around what should we be focusing on, kind of the bullet points. What's next for the IWG in your perspectives?
Get the money out.
Okay, that's it. That's great.
Nice job. I'm not going to be able to
That was
do it
pretty
in
good,
that. First of all, I want to say it is a testament to how well the IWG is working if you look around the room. And there's so many things going on across the country, and the relationships built with the federal partners must continue. Secondly, we have to figure out how that we can message this beyond red and blue politics. This is not about that. It's about our communities being stronger and more vibrant. We need to continue to work on your sister agencies so that we're more consistent with where we're headed in the future and not prematurely forcing us to make changes before our communities are ready. That's not the right approach. And finally, I think we need to tap into private sector funding. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think we can do a better job. I know in Wyoming we can do a better job of tapping into that funding.
Wonderful. You guys are awesome. I mean, this was a lot of fun for me. I wish I would have moderated some more, but this was the one I chose. So thank you all. And just some logistics. We're going to start at 1. I know we've cut into your lunchtime. If you've ordered lunch, it should be out there. If you're going out of the building, remember, don't bring your lunch back in. But we are going to start back at 1 o'clock. Have a great afternoon, and so look forward to seeing you in a little while. So thank you all. Give our panel a hand.